Hello there, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a day in the life vlog. It is Friday, April 17th. Today is our final official day of review before the Math STAAR, which we take next week on Tuesday. Monday is gonna be our Monday fun day where we just kind of go over some last minute reminders and then relax and have a good time. I chatted about that in a previous vlog, but I wanted to bring you along with me today as we do our final preparations for the test. I'm gonna share a little bit of my honest thoughts about mandated, standardized state testing. Stay tuned for that. And I'm also gonna share some good things, some glimmers, because I feel like this time of year, we need those desperately. Okay, before we start with the good things and glimmers, I promise they're coming, but I need to just be realistic with y'all. I'm tired, okay? Ignore the bags under my eyes. Ignore me if I don't make any sense at any point, which is bound to happen. It's just been a long week, and on top of all of the STAAR prep, which I think is exhausting only because your brain is in overdrive because you're constantly trying to fill in all the little gaps, right? Your brain is thinking about, okay, I need to help this student with this, and oh yeah, I need to review this with that student, and it's just going a million miles a minute. And then on top of that, Billy left 2 days ago to go out of town for his big gala that he has every year for work. And that means I have been soloing it at home, and therefore I'm getting to sleep later because usually we would tag team dinner and dishes and things like that. But it's been just me, plus I'm on Ember duty full time. Usually Billy takes her out in the morning and then he spends more time with her in the evening when I'm wrapping things up for work. But since he has not been here, I've had to get up an extra 20 minutes early so that I can take her out for some ball throws in the morning and get her some exercise and movement. And then the little cherry on top is my training has really been ramping up. I'm 8 or 9 weeks out from nationals, which I compete June 12th. And then right after that, I'm leaving to go hike Everest Base Camp, and I'm kind of at the highest point of my training for that highest Everest.
Yeah!
Anyway, this is what we get with less sleep than usual, but I have been doing, on top of 5 days a week, powerlifting, which those sessions take upwards of 2 hours each. I've also been doing 4 50-minute sessions of cardio afterward, and I'm doing a weighted vest at either a full incline on the treadmill or stair stepper, and I just feel like I'm finally running out of steam just a little bit. I'm just tired, but I'm done complaining. And I wanted to share that only because I want to validate if you're also feeling exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, you're not alone, I promise. I'm feeling it too, and I just wanted to be real with you all and put it out there. But let's pivot and let's share some good things, because there have been a lot of good things, and this is the time of year where it's easy to neglect those and not pay attention to them because there's so much else going on. But you've got to highlight them, bring your mindset to them so that they are what can continue to drive you forward. So one good thing, I am having Starbucks brought to me this morning by a coworker / parent. She texted me last night and offered to get me Starbucks this morning, which was so sweet. And that allowed me a few extra minutes this morning because I've gotten into a routine. It's not a healthy routine. It's not a good routine. I'm not proud of it, but it is a routine nonetheless, of treating myself to coffee on Monday mornings and Friday mornings, as well as my little quick trip soda run after school on Mondays and Fridays. But what's funny about that is I'm such a creature of habit and I'm aware of my routines, but I don't realize that other people become aware of them too. And on Monday this week, I was running a little bit late, and it was so sweet. The Starbucks barista, who knows every Monday morning and every Friday morning, I'm gonna stop by for just my venti drip dark roast coffee with stevia and cinnamon, super basic, nothing fancy. but she noticed I was running late on Monday. I placed my order on the mobile app and then just go through the drive-thru to pick it up. And so when I went through the drive-thru, she already had it like out on the little counter piece waiting for me. So all I had to do was like roll down my window and grab it. And those are the little like connections, which remember, my word of the year that I have on my necklace is connect. Those are the little connections that are like, oh, that's really sweet that she knows my routine and she picked up on the fact that I was running late and she accommodated that without being asked. Like, oh, love it. I had a walkthrough this week. So in addition to our like formal observation, which I actually didn't have this year, it was my like, I don't know what it's called, but I didn't have an observation this year because I had fulfilled other things. I don't know. I don't ask questions, I just go, okay. But we usually have at least 2 walkthroughs where admin will spend 10, 15 minutes in the room and then do just like a little write-up. But you don't submit lesson plans or anything like that. It's very casual. But I had a walkthrough this week on Wednesday and it went really well. I kind of was winging it with an activity when it happened, go figure. Like I didn't know when she was coming and she just showed up and we were in the middle of something where I had just pivoted. But I'll talk about that when we get to the math review. But walkthrough, check, and it went well. And then math plans for the year are done. That was my weekend project. I was determined to get all of the lesson plans for after STAAR done. We're gonna wrap up our last module and then we start 5th grade skills. So we go into multiplying and dividing decimals, prime and composite numbers. What else do we hit? Adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. And all of those lessons are done. Plus, we're not giving students math homework next week because of the STAAR test, and that means next week I don't have to grade math homework. So lots of good things happening. And then outside of the classroom, I am happy to report that another 40 before 40 list item is not checked off, but it is at least in the process and is underway. One of my list items is to attend the Olympics, and the 2028 Olympics are in Los Angeles. And I had previously gotten on the sign-up list to get a, hopefully, ticket spot where you're able to go on and buy tickets. It's like a lottery system, way more involved than I ever imagined. But I signed up with 3 different emails. I got 3 different ticket slots. One of them actually I have today. But the very first ticket slot that I got was last Friday, and I was able to go on and secure tickets for Billy and I to go to a track and field day. We are gonna be attending the 100-meter semis and finals for the women, and then there's a few other events happening, like I think the men's 10K.
Yeah, I'm fast. I'm very fast. I'm like Forrest Gump.
I think there's some like shot put happening, some preliminaries with hurdles and whatnot, but I'm excited because that means that we will get to go to the Olympics and I'll get to check that off my list, and I was nervous about not getting to go. So yay, lots of good things happening. Let's pivot a little bit now again and chat about our Math STAAR review. Which, does anyone else automatically think of Ross from Friends when they hear the word pivot, or is it just me? If you know, you know. But this is again me just being hyper realistic with you all. I have to show you our updated balloon countdown. So we started this on Tuesday. It is our 5-day countdown, meaning school days, until the STAAR test. Inside each balloon is 2 pieces of paper. I shared this in a prior vlog where I was assembling them. 1 strip of paper has a question that my students have to answer, and the questions have been related to prepping for the STAAR test. So for example, yesterday's question was, what are 5 tools that can help you during the STAAR test? One of the questions was, what do you do as soon as you hear you may begin? And students were supposed to answer like, we put our Chromebook at a 45, meaning we tilt our screen so it's partway closed, and then we do our Math STAAR brain dump that we've been learning. We fold our other scratch paper to make 8 boxes. And then if they get the question correct as a class, which I typically have them all discuss it together, and I say, okay, choose a spokesperson that's gonna answer for the whole class. If they get it correct, the other strip of paper has some kind of a prize. So for example, yesterday they got these rainbow STAAR lollipops. The day before that, they had stinky feet. And of course, that's when I was having my walkthrough. So she walks in, I'm like, just FYI, their shoes are off because they earned stinky feet as a reward. But we're gonna be popping the day 2 balloon today, which I ended up just pinning these on this corkboard strip up at the top using a push pin because I had taped them to the board and that did not hold up. And the pins have been fine, but bless, this little balloon has just been slowly deflating. it's kind of representative of how I felt this week. But that being said, my students have loved this countdown. It was something so simple. I didn't do it last year. It was just an idea I had for this year, but they have been so excited. In fact, every day when we kick off our review, I kind of explain, all right, today we're kicking off with geometry review. This was my spiel to them yesterday. And I said, geometry is the last thing we review because it's typically what students need the most review with, and we want it to be fresh in your brain going into STAAR. And a student's hand raises and they're like, well, hold on, we have to pop our balloon. I'm like, I know, we're getting there, I promise. But they have been loving it. So today, 2 days out from STAAR, I don't remember what the question is. I think it's something along the lines of, what do you do if you get stuck on a question? And I just want them to say like, hey, you can try a different strategy. You can flag it and go back and review it afterward. You can look at your STAAR brain dump to see if anything can help. You can take a break, go to the bathroom, get a snack. And then the prize today is they will find out that Monday is Monday Fun Day, which again, I was already planning to do, but they don't know that. So they're gonna be super excited, and we can use that as our motivation to get through the final day of review today, because it's like, hey, today's it, last day, Monday Fun Day after that, so let's end on a strong note. With that being said, I think holistically, our STAAR review has been going really well. Most importantly, my students have been engaged. In fact, I don't know, the second or third day, I overheard one of them, they were like, oh, this is so much fun. And it was something very basic. But again, it's that simple reminder of it doesn't take much to add novelty and to make it more engaging for students. For one example, every day we've been practicing our STAAR brain dump. So this entire week, they have known all 7 steps of my STAAR brain dump. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I have a full video where I go over it and I teach it to you. I also have a video where I will teach it to your students and parents if you want. So go back, check the description box for the link. But anyway, when we do the STAAR brain dump every day, on my slide, when students come in, I tell them, hey, you need a piece of notebook paper, because that's what they're gonna have during STAAR. And after we do our balloon countdown, we do our STAAR brain dump. And this week, it has been like, I don't walk them through it, they're just doing it on their own. And as a little incentive, every day after we practice and we have completed the STAAR brain dump, I have them crumple up their paper and they shoot it into the recycling bin. And I'm like, all right, you're practicing for basketball. But I know some people are probably thinking it's wasteful to use a piece of notebook paper every day. Y'all, I've got piles of notebook paper, so I've already got it on stock. But it's something that makes it more fun for them, and like they get so excited every day to like throw it into the recycling bin. And meanwhile, I use that as our transition time, because I'm like, all right, you know, take your shot and then you need a whiteboard. After the STAAR brain dump, we do our spiral review. And I mentioned my walkthrough. So we were in the middle of a spiral review question when I had my walkthrough, and we've been doing about 3 spiral review questions per day. A lot of them are either previous STAAR test questions that have been released, or they are test questions from unit tests earlier in the year that a lot of students missed. We went back and analyzed the data and pulled out those questions. And it can get a little monotonous. A lot of them are like multiple choice, and after a while it gets a little old. But a few things I've been doing just to make it more fun. One, I will have students solve it on their own, but then they can get up to 3 signatures. And what I mean by that is once they have their answer, they can take their board around to other students, and if that student agrees with their answer, they will sign their board. And I tell them they can get up to 3 signatures, so they can have up to 3 students sign their board, but then they can also sign other students' boards, again, as long as they agree with their answer. So it's a way for them to kind of get validation of their work, or if no one will sign their board, they're like, ooh, let me go take another look at this. And it's something that they love. They're walking around, now granted, they get silly with it, and they're like, signatures, signatures, and regardless, they have fun with it. It's fine. And then I'll start to count down. So I'm like, all right, you need to be back at your seat in 10. And they're like, retreat, retreat. But it's those little things. And then on Wednesday, when I ended up having my walkthrough, it was another multiple choice question, and it was a lengthier question. There were 4 or 5 different fractions that all had different like denominators and numerators. And the question was asking them to compare it, but it was very wordy because it had like purple tablecloth, red tablecloth, white tablecloth, and it would say like the purple tablecloth is less than the red tablecloth. And it was a very complex problem, hence why we were doing it again, because a lot of students had missed it from the get-go. And so in the moment, I just got this idea and I said, okay, rather than them doing it on their own or even just like getting with a partner, I put them into random groups of 4, and within that group of 4, I assigned them each a letter, A, B, C, or D. They had a piece of paper, they folded it to make 4 boxes and labeled them A, B, C, D. Each person for their letter in their box on the paper had to either prove that their answer was correct or prove why their answer was wrong. That way, everyone had a job, everyone had a role. They could still work together, but if it was your letter, you were the one recording on the paper. After they worked as a group and decided on what answer they thought was right, I regrouped them, and all of the letter A's got together, all the letter B's got together, C's and D's, and as a new group, they discussed whether they thought their answer was right or not and why, like how they justified it or proved it. And then I had them all like sit down. I was like, all right, on the count of 3, like if you think you have the right answer, you're gonna stand up. And then we went over like why that one was right, and we highlighted a couple of the ways we were able to eliminate the other answers. And like super simple, and again, it was just something random I came up with in the moment, but they were all thoroughly engaged and it was great. Other random things. So we've been doing activities that come from Lead Forward, which I'll link their website in the description box. Last year I went to their Rockin' Review conference where we learned strategies to review for STAAR, and we're basically doing the same review this year that we did last year. One of the activities is called mystery bags. So they get a bag. Inside is some kind of what they call a stimuli, but it will be like bulletin information or a model of some kind, or in this case, like different shapes. And they have to come up with a true statement about this stimuli. So they have all these little cards in their bag, and they will, form them together to make a sentence. So like you'll see the different shape names, and then we have like lines of symmetry, there's different numbers. So there's multiple correct answers. And I always tell them, ooh, stretch, Michelle. They're not using all of the cards, they're just using some of them to make a true statement. Once they have that true statement, they write it on their poster, and our posters got smaller, so we are doing this one final time today, and I only had 4 posters left. Usually I've been using 4 posters per class because there are 4 mystery bags, and so each group gets a mystery bag, but I have 2 classes, so that's 8 posters total. And today's the last day, and I only had 4 posters left, and I was like, I really don't feel like going and tracking down more posters, so I just cut each one in half. So today they're mini posters, but after they come up with their true statement, which material control, I've been distributing materials a little at a time. So they start with just the bag, they make their statement. Once I approve their statement, I have them put any extra cards back in the bag, and I will then give them their poster, and I will give them a marker, and I give them the marker color that matches their mystery bag color. I have them write it on there, and then they have to return the bag with just the little cards. So they keep this, it stays with the poster, but they return the bag with the little cards to me once they are done writing their statement. Then they do what's called a tour of knowledge. So they're gonna take their marker and they're gonna visit a new poster, and they are gonna support why that statement is true. So they're gonna add some kind of a model, an equation, an example. They're gonna label vocabulary on the poster using their marker. I have them initial next to it for accountability. They will rotate to each of the posters, and then they end up back at their original poster, and they look at all the contributions the other groups made. And typically what I would do is when they visited the last poster, I would have them bring me their marker when they were done. And then at the very end, I would have them bring me their card and their poster. And then we would all convene together on the front carpet to go over it and debrief. But what was it? I don't know, last week or maybe it was earlier this week, because we've done this now 3 different times. We started with whole number operations. We did it, I think, for decimals, and then we're doing it today for part of our geometry review. But I had a student who was walking back to me with their poster like this, and they're like, oh, it's a UFP, an unidentified flying poster. And it's like those little moments where I just have to chuckle, because I'm like, they're kids. You know, they're 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, and you're reminded of that. It just kind of takes off some of that stress, you know, that we feel this time of year with testing season. Now, because we are repeating the activities from last year, there have been some things where I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this in a better way. Another activity we've done is called hand up, hand over. Basically, there are 4 different problems. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. You hand them out and they form groups. So all the 1s get together, all the 2s get together, 3s and 4s. They will look at, kind of like this, they'll look at like part of a question and then answer some questions about it. So they'll bullet out important information. They'll either find the answer, or if there's no question, they'll write what the question could be, and then they'll identify a mistake to avoid. After they are with that group and they fill out the information, they're gonna hold up their number and I pair them up. So I'll say, okay, 1s and 2s, you're now partners. 3s and 4s, you're now partners. You're gonna teach each other about your problem. So that's the hand up. Hand over is after you've taught your problem, you're gonna swap papers and then you're gonna get with a new partner and teach it to someone else. So they made you an expert on their problem, you're gonna make someone else an expert. And I remember last year when I did it, for whatever reason, the way I had them around the room, it was kind of chaotic when they had to then partner up. But this year I was smart and I was like, okay, 1s and 2s are gonna be in the front of the room, 3s and 4s are gonna start in the back. That way when they get with their first partner, they're literally just going across. And so like 3s and 4s are finding partners this way and then 1s and 2s are finding partners up there. And it made it much easier. And then we're also repeating activities from earlier in the year. So geometry, I used to play what I called physiometry with them. It was basically where I would say like, show me a point, and they would use their hands to show point. I would say, show me a line, and they would have their arms out with open hands at the end to show it goes on forever in one direction. I'd say, show me a ray. They'd have a closed fist on one side and an open hand on the other. I'd say, show me parallel lines, show me perpendicular lines, show me a right angle, turn 90 degrees with your body, turn 180 degrees, turn 360 degrees. And I would play it basically like Simon Says. So I would say, Mrs. Emerson says, turn 90 degrees. And they would do it. If I didn't say Mrs. Emerson says, but they did the action, they would be out and they would sit down. And they loved this, like so simple, but they loved it. And so we played some of that yesterday as part of our review. And it was engaging, it got them up and moving. They had a good time. I didn't have to spend time going over the directions because they already knew how to play it. So today is it. Today is our last like actual review day. They are gonna do a fast focus and countdown to STAAR. So the difference is fast focus is focused on one skill. So this is a geometry focus because we're reviewing geometry. Then countdown to STAAR is a mixture of all of the different TEKs, all the different standards. So today's fast focus and countdown to STAAR is graded. So that will be our final grade before STAAR, and then next week we have a unit test that we have to take after STAAR. But I have my gold star stickers, which have been a hit. So once a student is fully done their page, whether it's graded or not, like I've checked it, I put a gold star on it, they take it home that day. That way they have it to review. I've been using my gold Sharpie, which I finally got, and my students love that. So we're gonna wrap it up today. We're gonna end on a strong note, fingers crossed, and hopefully remember all of those different geometry terms because it's definitely been a little bit fuzzy. It's been a while since we've done geometry. And then just to take a little break on math, in science, several weeks ago, I think I shared this in a video, we created this little terrarium that demonstrates the water cycle. So because it is a closed 2-liter bottle, which I just trimmed this and had cut it and then placed the 2 sides inside of each other, it's filled with some sand, some soil, and then we put a little mint plant in there and then a little plastic cup with some water. It's by the window, so the water evaporates, but then it condenses and rains back down. And this mint plant, y'all, has been thriving. It's now like curled up because it has grown so much. It has run out of room. I think my students named it Jeff Bezos, I don't know. But they made a great connection this week because now we are talking about plant structures and functions. So we made this to discuss the water cycle, but now my students picked up on the fact that like at the bottom, you can actually see some of the roots. And we've been talking about how roots will grow wide if they can't grow deep. So if the soil is like frozen or rocky, they will grow wide in order to collect water versus in places where there is a lot of rain and there's the ground, you know, goes all the way down without freezing, they'll grow deeper. And we talk about those connections with the environment. We did a mystery science lesson where we analyzed trees and tried to figure out which tree would grow in that environment. And my students picked up on that little connection. I was like, oh, I love that. Okay, so I need to take down all of my math posters before the STAAR test test on Tuesday. Thankfully, these are up on the board just using little clips, so it's very easy. They just slip right out. Now, when we take our interim tests, which are like our practice tests for STAAR, I usually wait and take down all the posters like after school the day before. But leading into the STAAR test, I want to take them down a little bit early so that my students can get used to it. The room definitely looks different without them there, and I don't want it to be this big shock on the day of the test of like, oh my gosh, all of the resources are gone. I mean, they know that they'll be taken down, but still, I'd rather take them down now so they can get used to it like this afternoon and Monday before the test. But I figured while I'm doing that, we could talk a little bit about my feelings, my honest feelings when it comes to these big standardized tests. Now, here in Texas, we take STAAR, but I would say a majority of states have some form of a standardized test. Like when I taught back in Maryland, we had, oh gosh, it changed names. It was PARC and then it was MCAP, but it was the same type of test. It was just geared toward the standards that we used in Maryland. And recently I saw a reel on Instagram that I thought was kind of funny. And it was saying how, you know, teachers are always told like, remember your why. And she was like, don't forget teachers, this time of year, your why is preparing your students to take this, you know, 4-hour-long standardized test. And obviously it's meant as a joke, although it's also somewhat true. But I have definitely shifted my feelings when it comes to standardized testing. Now, this is where I'm gonna be particular with my words because I think, hold on, let me get down. It doesn't really matter how I feel about the test. The reality is my students have to take the test, and therefore I need to structure my approach around that reality rather than centering it around my personal feelings. Do I love standardized testing? Absolutely not. I think there are far better ways to spend our time where we could gather more useful data, because with the STAAR test, we don't get the data until after they are no longer in our class. Therefore, the data is not useful for us. Now, it's useful for next year's teachers, but at that point, they're teaching new standards and regardless. So, am I a fan of testing? Absolutely not. But the reality is my students need to take this test. And so I remember when I started teaching, and even back in second grade, like we had a big standardized test that we would take, and I always went into it with the mindset of, well, I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on this test because I don't care about the results. Like, it's a measure of how my students do on one day, and I know that they are more than a test score, and I know that they know more than sometimes is portrayed on the test, and some students are good at testing and others aren't. And I always went into it with the approach of like, well, it's fine. I don't care how they do on the test. And over time, as I've gained more experience, I've shifted that mindset, and now it's more of this idea of whether I like it or not, and whether I care about the results or not, my students have to take the test. That's the reality. And this is not gonna be the last big test that they have to take by any means. They're gonna have to take tests in middle school, in high school, in college. They're gonna have to take certification exams potentially for their careers. And so it's less about this particular test and more about setting them up for success and knowing that if they have to take this test, I want it to be a positive experience for them, and I want them to feel prepared. And so that's why I do so much for test prep. It's really because I don't want my students to go into the test not feeling confident and feeling anxious and feeling overwhelmed and then feeling bad about themselves if they get to tough questions. I would rather equip them with the tools that they need to be successful on the test so that it can be a more positive experience for them. And when I think back to taking these types of tests as a kid, I don't remember my scores and anything like that, but I do have some very negative memories of the actual test taking process, mostly because I don't remember really practicing in class. So it was always this big like contrast to what we had done. And so I didn't feel prepared. But then also when I was in third grade, I peed my pants because we weren't allowed to go to the bathroom, and I told them I had to go and they said no, and I literally just had to sit there and pee my pants, which is so sad. So I always tell my students, at least you can go to the bathroom, you can have water, you can have snacks, because we were not allowed that when we were testing. And so I do all of these things like the balloon countdown, and I shared in previous videos, I'm having their parents write them letters of encouragement. I've prepared these STAAR survival kits. We're doing our Monday Fun Day. I do that so that it creates a more positive association with testing for them, because I feel like that's the best best impact I can have on them with this test, right? Like that's the good that can come out of this, knowing that that will set them up for success in the future. They're not gonna have this awful testing anxiety. And ultimately, when they sit down to take the test, I want them to feel prepared. I want them to have seen similar questions before and know how to eliminate answers and know how to use the tools and feel like they have what they need to be successful so that after the test, they don't leave it feeling defeated. And so at the end of the day, it's like if they've got to take this test, I don't have a choice in that. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. But what I can do for my students is make it a more positive experience for them. So that's what I've been trying to do with this whole review. I definitely used to not like teach to the test or even really spend any time on test taking strategies. But over time, I've realized like there is benefit in that, in setting students up for success and making sure that it's a positive experience rather than a negative one. So those are my thoughts. I'm gonna put my posters into the closet, embrace the less colorful side of things, and then we'll chat about how the day went. Please do me a favor and just ignore my hair because in addition to being very humid today, it also was incredibly windy and we had study hall time outside and then we also had recess time. So it is what it is, but I'm gonna be packing up and heading out because I got all my posters taken down. I also reorganized behind my desk just a little bit, was able to like put away papers that I had been neglecting that needed to get filed away and just cleaned up, and I feel good. And ironically, earlier I mentioned that I was getting coffee and that didn't end up happening because that person who was gonna bring me coffee, their kid wasn't coming to school, so they're gonna bring it another time, so it's fine. But I did supplement with an energy drink and I'm probably gonna stop at Quick Trip on my way home and get my either Cherry Coke Zero or a like Dr. Pepper Zero because that's my little Friday treat. And sometimes you need a little something to help you get through. And ironically, I mentioned with Starbucks that the barista knows my routine. Quick Trip also knows my routine. The cashier there that typically works on Fridays, I once went on a Thursday because we had no school on Friday, so I treated myself on Thursday. And when I went to check out, she said, ma'am, it's not Friday. And I said, I know, but it's Friday to me. So it's those little things that you just gotta enjoy. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed this vlog. And if you did, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and notification bell. I will vlog again, probably post STAAR because then we can talk about where we go with math after that. We do roll into 5th grade skills. And as I mentioned, everything is all planned out so I can share a little bit of that with y'all. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on and I will catch you in the next one.